Hey everyone, I'm Yvette Lloyd, host of Life Her podcast. I have Steve Perry here. He is a bold, encouraging, and generous leader on a mission to fund billions for God's kingdom. After a 17-year career in financial services and leadership role at a Fortune 100 firm, he answered the faith-driven calling and walked away from a $900K salary to launch the reoccurring solutions. With this, it's an amazing book that he has, the capacity of model and a heart of helping others thrive. Steve is now empowering advisory firm and also entrepreneurs to build an impactful teams and also do generous lives of rooted in their purpose. Hey Steve, how are you?
Good, Yvette. How are you?
I am good. I'm real good. I'm excited about this interview because a lot of people need to hear like different transitions that they make, because you took a leap, a huge leap.
Yeah, yeah, that I did.
Yes, definitely. So to get into it, you walked away from a $900K role of the following faith-driven calling.
Yeah.
What gave you the courage to take such a bold leap, and what has God taught you since?
Yeah, faith and obedience. I mean, I know like it's in the question, but that's it. Like, you don't do that by running any type of pro and con list. I would say though, Yvette, like one of the practical thoughts I had, during the time was like, I was 37 and I'm like, 60-year-old Steve Perry, does he look back and is he glad he stayed at the same company for 40 years and, made 30, 40, 50 million dollars over his career? Or does he look back at that moment in time 23 years prior and say, I missed it, I should have gone, I should have done it? And the answer was the latter. Like, I would regret it. I would feel like I was disobedient. I would feel like I wasted the potential that God gave me. And so, that's a pretty powerful and convicting force behind it. The other thing, it was very unique, Yvette. Like, my role as a managing partner of running a firm of 120 people, an advisory firm, I did a lot of recruiting. And a lot of the people that I was having recruiting conversations with, where I would discuss with them and figure out, would it be a great career move for you to leave whatever you're doing and build a financial advisory practice from scratch? And my target demographic was men and women in their mid to late 30s that were probably making $200,000 to $300,000 a year as a sales manager or a regional vice president or a sales leader, in some type of organization, that were like, I need to step out and bet on myself and build my own thing. So I did that every day, all day, had amazing conversations. I was pretty good at it too. So like, I got a lot of people to do that. And then faced with, God calling me to do that, I found it'd be pretty hypocritical. I wouldn't be able to live with myself, continue to operate in doing that every day and knowing I didn't do it myself.
What's so interesting about that, a lot of times God give us signals and he give us the leading role to actually just listen to him and make the move. Mm-hmm. How can people actually recognize if it's God that's actually speaking to them to make these drastic moves, knowing it's a calling that he's given them?
Yeah. It's gotta come from having time spent with him. Yeah. Like a 5-minute devotional in the morning you're not getting to know God anytime soon. So it's, reading his word, reading the entire Bible, at least every year. It's spending time in prayer, 10, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I spend about 60 minutes in prayer a day. And that's just because there's so much at stake. Like, if I am not spending time listening to God, I'm spending time listening to something else. And like, I know who knows it all. Like, who's seen the plan? He's got the game plan. Like, so why wouldn't I spend time with him? I actually, if that's something that, I would share, I used to not be a reader at all. Like, I prided myself, like I got through high school and college without reading a whole book. And then I hired a coach 10 years ago, and he's like, all right, time to start reading. And he's like, you need to read a book a week. And so I did. So I read, for a few years, I'd read a book a week. Well, as my wife would say, I listened to a book a week. I'm not actual, I gotta listen, I can't read it.
Yeah.
And then a few years ago, I stopped. And the reason I stopped, now I'll read 6 books a year now. was because that was taking away from reading the Bible. And all the wisdom I ever need is in that. And then I get to talk to God about it. And trust me, like, he doesn't speak to me all the time, but if I listen and try to hear from him, I will. And what I know is that if I'm reading his word daily and I'm spending time in prayer, that chair back there, I'll just sit with my face down in it like this, and I picture walking into the throne room of God. And the Bible says that Jesus and the Holy Spirit are there praying to the Father on behalf of us. So like the visual I have in my mind is walking into the throne room of God, and Jesus and the Holy Spirit are there praying, Father, like, help Stephen in his business relationships, and their sales, and their working with people, help them to be encouraged. And I walk in on them and I'm like, hey, can I join this conversation? Like, I picture that. It might seem a little bit weird, but when you're in that mentality, I think that the thoughts that go into your head that we naturally have I define those as coming from God, and I add an extra weight to them in my decision making.
Wow, that is really deep. I really thank you for even just sharing that to the extent, So how has your relationship with God evolved since founding the Well Recurring Solutions?
Yeah, there's been a lot of things that have surfaced and come up that I would say the current one that I'm going through is like the idea of manna, right? So the Israelites, they're in the wilderness and they disobey God. So he's like, all right, you got to go around for 40 years before you can go to the promised land. And he gives them this, this white bread, kind of thing that shows up every morning. And he's like, if you collect any of it overnight, it's going to rot and it's not going to be there tomorrow. Only collect enough for the day. And God has given us in my business and my family enough for the day, right? We've never missed payroll. We've had as many as 48 people on our team on this 1.5-year journey. We changed our business model a little bit, so we've leaned out. We've only got 30 right now, but no one has ever missed a paycheck. I haven't got paid yet, but that's, he's provided for my needs. My family is taken care of. I've never shared this, right? Silly little things, like before I left, I got in a car accident.
Wow.
And 1.5 years later from that car accident, a year into my business, right, we got a check for $50,000. Now that's like a couple weeks of expenses at our company. So it's not like some people, that's a year's worth of money. I recognize that's a lot of money. In the grand scheme of things though, that will sustain our family for a good period of time. That takes care of our personal needs. So God is providing in different ways than maybe in the past, but everyone's got a paycheck. Everyone we owe money to, right, gets paid on time. And, our clients get taken care of. We get to invest in growing our company. And I know at some point, like, this is going to be an entire well of support for people all around the world that need it. So day by day faith is really, that's a long way to say, like, I have trust him for my manna every day.
That is amazing. And it kind of lined up with my next question, because a lot of people in business, we get frustrated, we be ready to quit, and we don't understand why certain things is happening.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't understand like that breakthrough and keeping that faith with God, that trust with God for you to lead the way as far as your business, and understand that when you go through things, it's elevating. And so many business owners struggle with mixing with faith and finances. What's your perspective on faith and wealth, and how it should work together for kingdom impact?
Yeah. So, there's some frameworks that I've kind of worked with, percentage numbers, things like that. I believe it all belongs to him. I believe that if you truly seek him, whenever you have the resources, he'll tell you what to do. And that doesn't mean always give it away. Through our career, I'll just share this. I don't think I've shared this before, right? So my career prior to leaving my corporate career, we had made $5 million. And of that, we had about $1 million in the bank and investments and different things like that. We had given away a little over $1 million of that. We had lived on $1 million of that. We had paid taxes on $1 million of that. And then about $1 million of it I had put back into growing my business. So it was kind of like 20%, right? Saving, living, giving, taxes, and reinvesting in the business, right? So it's kind of a simple way to look at it. But keep in mind, like, I lived on $1 million of that, right? I could have lived on less, right? But I think that was what we felt like God said, enjoy this. We tithed 10% and gave, in later years it was 30, 40, 50%, but in earlier years it was only tithing. And then the saving, right? So saving 20% of our income. So we had $1 million, which has gone into the business and invested in growing this. Like, if we hadn't have saved that, we wouldn't have been able to do this. And so going forward, I don't know what my philosophy is going to be. Trust me, I'm working through it. I think one of the gifts that God has given me is generosity, where my hands are like this and stuff just flows through them to different places that God directs. But I will say this, the Bible is very clear that we should lay up treasures for ourselves in heaven, not on earth. And so one of the philosophies that I have is that my heavenly net worth should be more than my earthly net worth. So what I've sent on ahead, right, by taking care of widows and orphans, right, where Jesus talks about that's pure religion, funding the gospel, whatever we're called to. I feel called to funding evangelism. People feel called to fund different things. That amount of money should be more than what I've stored up for myself on earth here. And so that business owners, kingdom-minded entrepreneurs, I would challenge them. Look at your heavenly net worth, look at your earthly net worth, and use that as a starting point from where you create your philosophy.
That is so true. So what are your top 3 mistakes financial advisory firms make when trying to recruit or scale their team?
Let's jump right into it. I love it. Yeah. So I see that they try to, a couple things. They try to do it all themselves, right? So the founder of these firms is typically a very incredibly talented, smart, intelligent person who's literally created this out of nothing. And now they've got a firm that's making several $1 million a year, probably in profit, many of our clients are in 8 figures in revenue, and they've got a team, and they're starting to step out from where they aren't working with clients anymore to where now they're the CEO, and they're trying to replace themselves. And they try to do one of 2 things. They try to hire and scale through introductions and referrals from people that they know, or they assign someone on their team to post the job on Indeed or LinkedIn or ZipRecruiter and hire the right talent that way. Let's talk through both of those, right? Referrals sound really good. That seems like that's amazing. It's someone we know, they're vetted, they're credible. Here's what happens is the defenses go down significantly. The filter, if it was a sieve or a pasta strainer, right? The holes are really big, and they're gonna have blind spots in hiring those because they're like, oh, Joey knows them, or that's Karen's cousin. And then they hire somebody, which is the most expensive mistake you can make if you hire the wrong person, because it costs you twofold. Number one, you pay them for a period of time, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. It's usually longer if it's someone that you know, but from time when, oh man, I need to fire this person to when they actually fire it is a lot longer. And that costs you in salary, benefits, sometimes culture, where your team knows that's not the right person, but it's Joey's cousin, so that's why they're here. And eventually they're out. So that's a mistake. But the revenue cost is huge. Most of the people that we're hiring for our clients are revenue producing roles. They're financial advisors or they're leadership positions. And those financial advisors that they're bringing in are going to bring in or allow the company to bring in millions and millions of dollars of revenue, like $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $8 million in revenue a year, and certainly over a couple of years. And so let's just say it was the bare minimum $1 million. You have the wrong person in there. Joey's cousin is in there for 9 months. That's $750,000 that you lost in opportunity cost, plus another 100, 200,000 in hiring and training and onboarding and your team time. That's $1 million mistake.
You know what? I've never thought of it until you actually said that, because referrals, I always thought referrals were good until I actually got in a bind of a situation of me losing my business, and referrals, knowing people and just keeping them there, like what you saying, like keeping them there. It's like don't want to cause conflict, or
Yep.
you don't want to hurt someone's
Yep.
feelings, or it's just so many things just pop up in your mind, but it's making you lose control of your business at the same time, and your value of your business decreases a lot to a point you can lose it. You will lose it. That's crazy.
Yeah, 100%.
I haven't really thought of that with you saying that.
100%. Yeah. And then the owner's like, all right, well, what do I do? I'm not hiring Joey's cousin again. I'm going to go and post it on the internet, right? I'm going to do Indeed and ZipRecruiter and LinkedIn. That's really professional. But think about this. Who's applying to that job?
Right.
Who's applying?
That's
You're
true.
counting on inbound, and you're like naturally, and I hate having to say this, but it's true for the most part, you're getting C players.
Yeah, that's true.
The A player, they're not applying because they already have networked. Like, you want someone who's a go-getter and like they've already networked their way to that right position, that next position. That your A player, they're working somewhere else and they're dissatisfied, but because of who they are, they're not actively applying somewhere else. You got to pay.
How do you get them then?
It's the same way these firms built their business. They had to go get the clients. They had to go build a mousetrap. They had to build an engine that attracts and brings the right people in. And
Right.
that takes a lot of time. And quite frankly, it's not worth their time and energy to build that out. It's cost me almost $2 million to build our fly trap, our engine of bringing in the right caliber of talent that's actively working somewhere else successfully, but finding them in a very timely manner, and then having a constructive conversation, and then introducing them to our clients to have a conversation about whether or not the career move at their firm works.
Yeah, it's like hitting gems.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, seriously. So you conducted thousands of interviews. What key trait separates a high performer from an average one?
Yeah, I'll tell you the number one thing I look for. And I would say this is going to apply across the board. I look for a history of success. And the reason that I say that is because that is irrespective of race, religion, age, experience. Like, it transcends. I look at whoever the individual sitting on the other side of the screen is, or the room from me is, and the question I always ask first is the same. Tell me your life story. And I don't want the short version. I want 8 to 10 minutes. I want you to tell me 2 things as you go through there. Like, brag on yourself. Tell me where you've been successful. And then I want you to talk to me about what adversity have you faced and how did you overcome it. And so what I'm looking for in their story is, A, are they a good storyteller? B, with what they have had opportunity and access to in their life, what performance level did they attain? Because I know if in their life, no matter how much or how little opportunity they've had, they've been successful at that, then there's a good chance they can do it in my environment as well. So that's the fastest way to get the highest caliber level of talent that I've found for doing thousands and thousands of interviews.
Wow. So in your experience, what's more important, the skill set or the mindset, and how do you spot on like the right one as far as in the candidate?
I'm going to take the bait and say mindset, because I think it's true and they can learn anything, but you have to look at where your company is at, right? So a lot of the firms that we work with are not startups. They've been operating for 5 to 20 years. And so they have systems in place. They know what how processes work. Even if they're not formalized, they know how they should work. There's a culture, there's an expectation. They're not growing 400% a year, or they're not growing 100% quarter to quarter. And so in that sense, they have the luxury of hiring for mindset and not necessarily skill set. Now, here's what I mean by that, right? There's kind of 3 levels of talent, right? There's potential talent. Potential talent means that they've been successful at something in the past, but not at all in the area that you're hiring them for. That's going to have the lowest cost of talent, but the highest cost of training and development. In the middle, you've got emerging talent. Emerging talent is they've been successful in the past at something else, and they have some experience in what you're hiring them for. It's going to be a higher cost of labor or talent and a moderate cost of investment in time and energy training. And then you've got proven talent. Proven talent is they have done exactly what you're looking for on a high level, high caliber basis. You're going to pay premium price for that, but they're going to jump right in and make an immediate impact. And so where you're at in the firm, right? And so you could layer over that your question of mindset, right? All of them have to have the right mindset, but they all have different levels of skill set. And so what I found personally building my company has been my experience in the past was we had a very good, working at a Fortune 100 company, having a company of 120 people that I was leading. I had a lot of infrastructure and resources to take potential talent or like potential mid talent, and we could develop anybody. At this company, I don't have the money to pay for experienced talent, and quite frankly, equity is not on the table. I did not leave my career to give away my company. So I have one business partner, he's our chief operating officer, and that's our cap table. So I can't afford proven talent. However, I am finding there are some areas that I need proven talent, and I don't have the time to train and develop. So as a company grows, you move up through that hierarchy there. When we talk with clients, we're trying to figure out, where do they want to be on that chart based on what their budget is. And so those are a few of the different character traits, qualities, skill sets, mindsets that we consider in making hiring.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool though, because it's like, a lot of people can't have the mindset, but they don't have the ability to have the skill, vice versa. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty cool how you just like break it down for you to actually figure out what's what.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your book,
yeah.
The Capacity Model.
Yeah. What
is the core message behind it, and who did you write it for?
You're not going to like the message behind it.
Oh, Lord.
The message, the subtext, the beginning of the book says that stress is a gift.
Why?
I know, right? Pretty provocative. No, so here's the point, right? Stress is a gift because it's life telling you that you need to grow. You don't have the capacity to handle everything that's coming at you. It's time to grow your capacity. And so the model says that our capacity, Yvette, is built on three things. It's our education, our habits, and our relationships. And so the more time that we have done to grow our education, think of it as a pillar, right? And the pillar holding up the ceiling of our capacity, right? So we've done a lot to grow our education, right? That's a tall pillar, our capacity is tall. We have incredible habits that we've put in place and developed, right? That's a tall pillar of habits. And we have incredible network and relationships and depth of relationship, right? We've got a tall pillar here, and it's holding this up, right? We got great capacity. But if any of those are shorter, right? You think of it like, 1, 2, 3, right? That side of our capacity is going to be dipped and we're going to be low there. So we're going to bang our head on the ceiling of our capacity a lot, and we're going to feel stress. And when we feel stress, we have two choices. We can either break down, 3 stages of breakdown. First is disappointment. I use marriage as an example of this, right? So you get married and you have your first fight. Your spouse is like, hey, when are you going to put the toilet paper on the toilet paper holder, right? Obviously, it comes over the top. It doesn't come from the bottom. And they're like, no, it's totally the bottom. You gotta, right? You have your first fight, right? And you're disappointed in your spouse. Like, gosh, why did we never talk about toilet paper when we were dating? And we get disappointed. If we sit in that too long, we move to disillusionment stage. Man, if my spouse is going to be mad about the toilet paper, they're probably going to be mad about kids. They're going to be mad about my job. They're going to be nagging all the time. Like, I can't believe I married this person. And if we sit in that for too long, then we move to this third stage, which is greener pastures. We leave. We're like, you know what? Let's just get divorced. Pretend it didn't happen. I'm going to go back to being single. And by the way, when you go through that breakdown cycle and you come to that point of greener pastures where you're leaving, it actually works for a season because you're reinserting yourself into the cycle below your capacity ceiling. But you start dating again, you get engaged, you get married again, and that toilet paper situation comes up again. You didn't do anything to grow your capacity. So the same thing that caused you stress before, because you went on to greener pastures, is going to cause you stress again. So instead of having a breakdown, in the book I talk about we need to have a breakthrough where we look back and say, What do I need to do? Do I need to learn more about toilet paper? Or do I need to learn more about human interaction and know that it's not about the toilet paper and raise my education pillar? Or maybe it's, I'll just turn the toilet paper around and develop a new habit, or develop a habit of asking my spouse, what's really going on, right? Well, that habit, that'll grow your capacity soon. Or maybe it's a relationship. I don't understand why my spouse is nagging me about the toilet paper, but my parents have been married a while, or this leader in my church has been married a while. Let's go to them and ask them to help counsel us through that. Develop some more relationship capacity. The ceiling raises, and look, now you're not stressed by that issue anymore.
You know, it's so crazy. It reminds me of like you as a child not learning from your mistakes.
Yeah.
And so if you're not going to learn from that mistake you just made, and you decide not to improve yourself, you're going to continue to make that mistake until you actually fix yourself.
Yes.
And like, as far as like having that stress there, you know, stress is like, technically, as you will say, going through a storm. You know what I'm saying? If you're going through a storm, you have to really analyze and pay attention to the things that's transpiring during the storm.
Yeah.
And if you continue to do things to create the storm to become worser, that's exactly what you're going to get until you actually get your head bumped and you get tired of going through what you're going through. You have to make these changes in your life. And I think that's one of the big things that people are afraid of. They're fearful, first of all. They're scared to step outside of their comfort zone, when usually being uncomfortable is the other side of success a lot of times. And so if you just really just step out there and have that faith there, I'm telling you, once you experience something new that you haven't experienced, then you be like, oh, this is it? This how I feel for real? That's like exactly how I feel. I love how you analyze that and put that together, because stress can be like that, though.
Yeah.
It'll drive you crazy if you let it.
Totally, 100%, yeah.
And then you're like, get it together.
Right. Yeah, you're like, I know better, but like, it's still stressful, and I don't want to grow. I don't feel like growing. I'm tired of growing.
Wow. So, like, what daily habits or disciplines have helped you maximize your own capacity as a husband, entrepreneur, and a man of faith?
Yeah. Great question, and it's always growing, it's always developing, right? We're in different seasons, so I can just talk through like my season right now. So let's see, 2 mornings a week, I get up at 5 o'clock and I go play basketball with a group of guys for an hour, and I burn 600, 700, 800 calories, and that helps me physically. 3 to 4 days a week, my office, I've got a golf simulator here, and so I take a few hundred golf swings for an hour, and believe it or not, that'll burn 300, 400, 500 calories. So I stay active in that, right? I'm doing something with the kids, on the weekend, where they're swimming at the pool, or maybe another basketball game, or a round of golf. And so doing something active every day is important. Every day I will read through a devotional of some sort. Like earlier this year, I saw somebody that was challenging a group of people to read through the Bible in a month. And I'm like, let me do the math on that. And so I jumped in. I did not do it in a month. I did it in 2 months though, but it is like, what? Like, I think it was like 2+ hours of reading or listening a day. So I did that, and then I took a little break. I'm like, I'm not doing that much. So right now I have a ChatGPT, and I asked it, like, it knows, I spend probably an hour with it every day, just going through different things. So it knows me, and I have it like creating a Bible study pertinent to what I'm going through regularly. And so, it provides commentary from other biblical scholars in there, and passage and, reflection questions. So I read through that. And then I will do an hour of prayer a day, 5 days a week. And what that looks like is, in the car. So I've got an app called the Echo app, and it's just like a big group of prayer requests that I just, anytime, you ever have people like, will you pray for me? And you're like, yeah. And then you're like, I'm never going to remember to pray for them, right? So I actually did something about that a year and a half ago, and I got this app, and I'll add it. Anytime someone asks that, I'll put it in there. And then you can set it so that like every 30 seconds, it'll ping to a new one. So I just put that on and pray while I'm driving. I get to the office, and right on my window there, I'll turn the lights off, turn a little bit of worship music, piano music on, and I'll just do that too. And I'll pray through that for a while. And then at 8:55, 9:55, 10:55, 5 minutes before the hour, all through my workday, I have an alarm that goes off just to remind me to stop and pray for 30 seconds. My wife and I have a date, so we used to have date night every Friday night, and it was usually something fun and extravagant and, cool. And then, leaving that lifestyle before, we had to get creative. And so, it's not necessarily as fancy, but it still is important that we get together. So right now, Tuesday mornings at 8 o'clock, she drops the kids off. So I bring the kids to school 4 days a week, and I pray with them in the car, talk to them about their day, like what's going on, like get to spend some time with them. And then Tuesday mornings, I meet my wife for coffee, right? So that's relationship with her. And we chat and talk about everything that's going on. Yeah, lots of things. I mean, Sunday's church, right? I'm on the worship team. And so I'll bring my girls early and they'll sit and hang out and volunteer and help set up and all kinds. So lots of different habits.
That is great habits. That is really great. So tell me, how can business owners and leaders apply the capacity model in their own lives and achieve a sustainable growth?
Yeah. I plug this book more than I plug my book, and I don't plug my book even anymore. People ask me about it, but I don't know if I've sold any in the last few months, which is fine. So there's a book called Living Forward by Michael Hyatt, and it's a phenomenal book. It's really what's kind of directed a lot of the wild decisions that my wife and I have made through our life, just in following what we feel God calling us to. But in that, you create a life plan, Yvette. And you do a couple really cool exercises. Number one, you write down the list of all the people you want to speak at your funeral, and then you write down what you want them to say at your funeral. That's a super powerful exercise. And then you pick the top 6 to 8 areas of your life that are the most important. You rank them in order. You write down what the envisioned future looks like for that area of your life. You write down a motivational quote or verse for it, and then you write down what the current state is, and then what are the specific actions you need to take to get to that envisioned future. You pick 6, 7, 8 of those, and then you write all that out. And it's a 3 to 6 page document. It takes a whole day to do. But after doing that, will direct your steps. You're supposed to read it every day for a month, and then a couple times a week for a month, and then once a week ongoing. And I will tell you, that will create aligned and prioritized daily actionable steps. That's had the most impact on driving capacity for me.
That is amazing. A lot of times business owners, they really don't sit down and take that time out to actually write all of that down. And that creates so much structure, give you a lot more vision, give you a lot more ideas. It just gives so much as a business owner, because a lot of times we're in a beginning process, as we start off small. It's like we are the leader, we are the CEO, we are the employee, we wear many hats. And if we just really use the strategy that you just gave, it'll create us to grow, even at a small scale, into a bigger scale, if we start off like that in the beginning. And it's a blessing to have individuals like you to give us that much insight for us to actually start off like that, or start doing it right now, and we start to see the progress within ourselves and our business and even our staff.
Thank you. It's a journey, and I'm still figuring it out for sure.
Wow. So what's one lesson about money that looked like years to understand, but now you live by it?
I'll say here's one. Our pastor says that we are blessed to be a blessing. And so, we can be a blessing to other people in a lot of different ways. So let's apply that financially. I shared some of my philosophies around, giving financially. It's been tough though, the last 20 some months, not having a paycheck and not being able to be generous financially to the extent that we have been in the past, knowing that this is a building season. And so I would say that has put new meaning to the phrase blessed to be a blessing. Like, I will never take for granted the ability to be financially generous, because I know it is something for granted. The season has been super cool because it's allowed my wife, who has, a part-time job working at a nonprofit and really the only one bringing income into our house. Like, I watched her last year. At the end of the year, she gave her all the money she made the whole year. She gave all of that away. And she's the kind of person, for years it was like, no, it's writing a check's easy. It's about, volunteering our time and our talents and, showing up, which it totally is too, but how God has helped shape her now to being financially generous as well, when it would be really easy to say, we didn't make any money this year and this is the little bit that we made, and she wrote a check for the whole thing. It's just so proud of her and so cool to see. And so anyhow, but all the way back to your question of, what is one, like, you're blessed to be a blessing.
Yeah. I've heard you mention this a lot throughout the interview. I don't even know if you know this. You mention your wife quite often, and even just your family overall as kids. A lot of times success happens when you have that partner, that one in your life that not only supports you but keep the family together, and you both like coming together as one. I find that very important when it comes to you being a business owner.
Yeah.
Like, having that partner that understands your mission, understands everything that you're doing. Can you let people know like how important that is, and the fact that you guys both have God in your lives and, pray together and everything?
Yeah. It's a great call out, Yvette. Like, yeah. When I felt called to leave that past career, we felt called together. We were literally sitting next to each other in a room at a conference, and we felt it there. And I'll even go back 2 years prior. We had both felt, hey, probably time to leave, and just about left that career. And then both at the same time together felt, nope, we're called to stay. And so just communicating through that, it has not been easy. We've had some very difficult conversations in the last 20 months of like, I'm the risk taker, and I'm like, we'll go to zero. I don't care. We're going to put it all in. Like this is going to work. And she's like, I understand the Excel spreadsheet says we can last this long and we have enough money for this, but like, I'm not comfortable to actually make that number say zero in the bank account. And so, we had to discuss, okay, what is that number? And, the number that she was willing to put in and how much we had to leave is, a lot different than what I want, but, she's along for the ride. And so I will defer to her on that. And then if we feel like we need to go further, then we'll have that discussion and really feel, is God calling us to or not? So there's been tough conversations along the way, but we're having the conversations along the way.
Yeah, it's that balance. I love that. It's like some true balance, and it's so rare to have, and it's so important to have as well.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've made both bounced rent payments and six-figure charitable donations. What do those as far as that, what did it teach us about as far as financial stewardship?
Yeah, I would say, during the bounced rent check time, like I was not living in accordance with God's will. I was not being, completely surrendered and obedient to Him. I could point, put in a room, laid bare in front of Him, like, it would be very easy to say this, you're not walking in my paths. And I'm not saying that was the result of that. Obviously, He let me learn a lot and experience a lot and grow from that. But that was pretty apparent, and then fast forward to, call it some of the high points in life, right? I wasn't perfect, but because of what He had revealed to me in my life and said, these are steps that you need to take in obedience, I was walking in obedience in all of those areas. And, He would reveal more things, okay, you need to give this to me, you need to give that for me, you need to, do this, right? But I was a lot more aligned in His will and what I felt He was calling me to do. And one of the pieces of fruit from that was the joy and the blessing to be able to be generous financially in some of those ways.
Yeah. So how do you define kingdom wealth, and what role does a generosity play in a legacy building?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. I'll probably share maybe a hard thing that I've realized here. I assume that a lot of Christian business owners that I know are making millions and millions or tens of millions of dollars are giving the majority of that to their church and missionaries and kingdom causes. And I have learned that's not true. A lot of them are giving a tiny fraction of that. So here's my challenge. We're in America. There's not a better place in the world to create wealth. And you were put in America, given the gifts that God has given you of commerce, of business, of leadership, of charisma, of the ability to communicate. And in this time, in this period in America, using those gifts have been able to generate millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, maybe, of financial wealth. It's not yours, it belongs to God. And you are going to have to answer someday for why did you spend it on that versus this. I look at my life as an arc, and hopefully it's always going up like this. But I want to always be growing my heavenly net worth, meaning what I'm sending ahead to sharing the gospel with people who don't have the same hope that we do and the access to Jesus that we do. And I am scared to death. And you're not supposed to operate in fear, but like it does scare me to death to think that I would misplace some of the resources that God gave me and the opportunity He gave me in America. I would misplace that, and someone may end up in hell because I did not give that money when I was called to obediently, but I hoarded it for myself and literally bought things that are going to rust and fall apart someday. And so I would just challenge all kingdom entrepreneurs who follow Christ, who claim the name of Jesus, to take a re-look. And can they, before Christ, say that they're being an incredible steward? And there are many that are, and I hope that some are hearing this and feeling convicted, and they're going to add another 0 to the amount that they give to grow God's kingdom this year. And next year, they're going to add another 0. And if nothing else comes from this, right, that means literally millions more will hear the name of Jesus before they perish. And like that would be what message I would have to kingdom entrepreneurs.
So crazy. Before I started doing this podcasting and all of this stuff, I started a youth program, and I actually started it in the basement of my home. And I had young girls who I did not know who they were. I didn't know the parents. I didn't know anybody. And I'm just welcoming them in my house. And I just started mentoring them, teaching them about preparing them for adulthood, job readiness, college readiness, just teaching them these different things. However, at the time when I first started, my car went in repossession. I could barely afford my bills in my house. I barely have furniture in my house. And I'm just out here. Any money that I made or came across, I was providing for these kids before providing for my household. And I love that. What I was doing, I had an in-home daycare, and I didn't even have a lot of kids enrolled. I wasn't even making $700 a week at the time, but I was still doing the things that I needed to do. But over the years, my daycare did grow. But however, with my daycare growing, I was bringing in a lot of money. However, I never seen any of it because I always put it back into my youth program. And it ended up with me just not having absolutely nothing. But what's so crazy about it is the fact that I did it and I see where God has me now. And He still comes through. He still puts me in position even when I feel like I'm not in position.
Praise the Lord.
And He always still comes through, because the power of giving, especially when it's passionately and it's something that you wanted to do, something that you feel like you needed to do for God's children, it makes you feel good at the end of the day. But however, He always comes through unexpected. So I know what you mean when you say that, because it's like we will receive something just out the blue of nowhere. You'll be like, wait a minute, where did this come from? However, it's just the fruits that we have been given and planting along the way, and we keep doing all the time. So I agree with you, and we do need to continue to do things like that for his children.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. I love
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's why I was telling you, like, I just love your whole concept and everything that you're doing, because even though that 900K that you lost, you're beyond wealthy than that.
Yeah, praise God.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So tell me, if the audience could leave one piece of advice that you could give them today, especially for entrepreneurs who are struggling between comfort and calling, what would it be?
I would say that, between comfort and calling, make sure that if you're considering feeling called to take the leap into entrepreneurship and start a business, that you can truly point to God calling you to do it, because you're going to need, like there's going to be a word, there's going to be a sign, there's going to be a verse, there's going to be someone in your life that shared something that didn't even know what they were saying, that you're going to need to point back and know that God called me to do this, to carry you through the challenging times in that. I would say in the majority of cases, your spouse is going to, if you were equally yoked, your spouse is going to be on board with that, because you're going to need them, you're going to need him or her to help you through those times. And then the last thing I would say is you cannot pray enough. That you cannot be praying enough. Waste time with God praying. That's a phrase I heard when I started this company. Waste time in prayer. You can't pray enough.
That's so true. You can't.
I mean, we're days away from, being to the point where we're profitable and, ridiculously profitable beyond, where I thought we would be at this point. So we're just praying. We had prophetic words shared that, after May, there would be a significant shift in the company. And so we're just praying for that. We're praying that our hearts continue to remain pure, that our mission, the whole mission of building this company, again, is to fund the preaching of the gospel around the world, that God gives us discernment in, how much do we reinvest in growing the company, in rewarding our team members, our employees, in providing for our families who've gone along and sacrificed a lot in this journey with us, and then the rest going to him. And so our goal this year, we felt like God was saying that he'll provide $12 million in revenue this year, and basically we want to double every year over the next 4 years. And then the goal would be to have some kind of exit event that we spend the rest of our lives getting that to the ends of the earth with incredible people who've sacrificed their life to share the gospel with literally billions who have not heard the name of Jesus.
Wow. I'm so proud of you, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really am. Like, this is so amazing. I can't wait to see you on CNN or anything else that's coming for you, because I can see the future for you because of the man that you are. It's such a blessing for me to even be honored to even interview you. It's pretty nice. Well,
thank you. And thank you I know there's a ton of work that goes into this, so that does not miss me. So thank you for the investment you've made in growing this platform, growing your podcast, sharing, and so generously sharing and interviewing and spending time with me. So thank you.
Thank you. So how can people get in contact with you and follow your journey, or even try to be involved?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn way too much. So Steve Perry, the Well Recruiting Solutions, I'm not too hard to find on there. If you don't like what I have to say, then definitely don't follow me, because I talk a lot on there, but love to connect with anybody on there. I'm on that a lot.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to Like Her Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and also listen on audio on all major platforms. Thank you, and thank you, Steve.